What's up, you amazing people? I hope you're having a fantastic day. You are, of course, watching and listening to the Daily Dirty 30, also known as the DDT, here on The Kevin Lee Show. And I am your host, Kevin Lee. Now, for those of you who do not know what the DDT is all about, let me take a moment to explain. You see, it's a show that airs live at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday, and it's where I get to spend 30 minutes telling you, the viewer, all about the things that bother me today. What do I get out of it? It's easy. It's therapeutic. Why should you tune in? That's even easier. It's entertaining. Sound like a fair trade? Good. Let's get to it. Hello, friends, and happy Thursday. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. Well, it's about that time. It's 10 o'clock somewhere. Actually, it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast. And you know what that means? It can actually mean one thing. That's going to be that you're watching the Daily Dirty 30 here on The Kevin Lee Show, a show that airs Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And I am, of course, your host, Kevin. And today we're going to be talking about something I promised for quite a while over the last few days. Kamala, I got it right. Yay. Kamala Harris's voting record. So, where can I start with this? So many places. No, but in all seriousness, it was a lot easier to get her current voting record as a senator. And I think that's simply because she's still in office and she's running for office. So she can't just hide it. I mean, she's literally still, and in fact, technically she was, if she were to lose the presidential, ticket, she'll still have 2 years in office as a senator. So she's still, because, I don't know if you know this or not, senators get 6 years. So she's still right in the prime of her time running as a senator, and therefore her record is available and front and center and more or less pretty easy to get a hold of. I want to say that when we go over her record, you might be kind of shocked or surprised. Hopefully not. Again, I don't think there's anything that serious that we're actually going to uncover necessarily. And that's because lately they haven't been really voting on much of anything, to be honest. And even then, you'll see that there is actually an issue for about the last year when it comes to Kamala Harris and her voting record. But before we get there, I guess we'll just get right to the important information, shall we? And that would be this. We're going to jump over to her website. So I think the easiest and quickest way for us to be able to get as much information, because again, we're only doing the show for 30 minutes. So let's get right to it. And her information is going to be available on her, I guess you call it her website. It's actually going to be kamalaharris.senate.gov. That's her official website as a senator. So this is where you're going to be able to, what you're looking at right now is her main page. If you were to go to that address right now, is what you're going to find. And it'll say things like, I want to hear from you, share your opinion, email me. And of course, she's not getting the email. I mean, one of her many aides are going to get it, and chances are it's going to end up in the garbage or just get a canned response saying, thank you so much for reaching out to us. We will take this into consideration, or some garbage like that. And as you go down here, you're going to have links to Facebook and Twitter and social media, which I guess would be very common. You'll also see here phone numbers and addresses for both her Fresno, California office, her San Francisco office, her Sacramento office, Los Angeles, San Diego. Why does she have so many offices? I thought senators just had their home office and the other thing, the Washington, D.C., where they pretty much spend their entire time. That's so bizarre. I don't actually have to look into that. But I guess, again, this is a very typical layout that you would see normally if you went to any congressman or especially senator's web page or whatever on the Senate.gov site. You're going to see something not exactly like this, but similar. It's going to have a way to get a hold of them, about me page, services, social media, just like a landing page. It's just normal, right? Nothing unusual at all. But here, it doesn't really have any direct links to be able to find anything about who she is in the sense of her voting record, at least not up front. So after doing just a slight bit of digging, I found that if you go into her About page, it's going to have some, again, information, who she is, being sworn in, being the senator, growing up in Oakland, her college experience, her time as a DA in San Francisco, and again, of course, AG, and so on and so forth. But then on here, boom, there you see it, voting record and legislation. So if you click on voting record, it'll take us to a new page. And that new page will be, again, still part of her whole Senate.gov, or I should say Kamala Harris.senate.gov site, and it will list her voting records in order. Now, this would be a daunting task for me, even on my own, to go through all these voting records and click on them, because as you can see, there's quite a few here. And as we get down here, you'll see, oh, look at that, out of 31 pages. So if I go all the way to the end, you'll see that actually only goes to, I believe it's in 2019, about not even a year ago, in voting records. So it's a lot of records to go through. Mind you, she's been in office since January of 2017. This is not conducive to a half an hour show of going through here. And I mean, even if you just blindly like pick a page and go on here, you're going to see so many of them are going to be about cloture motions. I mean, cloture. All that stuff's cloture. Occasionally you will actually see a bill being passed, you know, and then here it'll have a simple breakdown of, you know, what she voted. Not voting means she literally didn't vote. Then you have, you know, yay is a vote for yes and nay is a vote for no. But not voting is basically the same thing as not present. Not completely unheard of when it comes to a senator not being there for all their votes. But you'll actually see there's an area, and it kind of makes sense if you think about it, but you'll see that there's a patch of time where she is not very active in doing her job. Truly. So we will get there in just a second. But again, like I said, it doesn't make much sense to go through all these bills, because if you go through all these bills, my goodness, my earpiece keeps falling out. I gotta fix it. You're going to notice that it doesn't have a whole lot of information, but we'll click on one. Actually, one that actually looks like something. Didn't we have one that was here? So this looks a joint resolution, whatever. Looks important. And as you go on here, it'll actually have some information. It'll say stuff like, you know, a joint resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5, blah, 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 goes on, tells you just a very brief summary, and then it'll tell you how the parties voted. It won't give you names, but obviously we already know how she voted because it says she didn't vote, but it would say yay or nay, and then it kind of gives you a breakdown of all the independents, the Republicans, the Democrats, you know, all the votes, who voted for what. Just a very simplified but accurate count of what happened. And even then, it doesn't tell you that much, right? And then if you have to click on something like this to find out what the actual item is about. So if I click on it, it'll bring forward, you know, who did whatever, who brought forth, what's the bill, who's the sponsors, who's the co-sponsors, and it gives you a lot of information, which is great. I mean, this is wonderful. But again, it's not conducive to being able to take a snapshot of what someone thinks and what someone does. And this is what we want to do here. We only have half an hour. We want to make sure that we're trying to get this information out, because again, you know, Kamala Harris is the VP candidate, and technically that isn't usually such a big deal. But as we all know, Joe Biden may not be in the best position mentally as we speak, and we don't know if and when, how long he will be in office for. So it's very important that we know as much about Kamala Harris. That is, if you're planning on potentially voting for her. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, I'm Democrat, of course I'm voting for her. Or no, I'm a Republican, I'm not voting for her. Or, you know, Joe and her. I think that's kind of ridiculous to throw your support behind an entire party blindly, to be honest with you. Not to say that you don't have that general leaning, and of course that's generally who you'll be attracted to. That's fine, but you still want to look into those people you're voting for, because maybe you don't like them, or maybe you like the other person. Surprisingly, you know. I mean, let's talk about 2016. There were actually a number, and this is confirmed now. You can easily find it anywhere on the internet. There's a number of voters who voted for Obama in 2012. Who were more or less independent or undecided type voters, you know, not really a left or right type of person, who ended up voting for Trump in 2016. And there were literally thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of them. And in some places in the swing votes, it actually made a difference. So it's important that we actually pay attention to who we're voting for, not just voting blindly. So that's kind of why we're doing this. We talked about what she thought about reparations. We talked about abortion. We tried to go over her record as a DA and an AG. And fortunately, found a little bit of information about her being what she did as the DA of San Francisco, but we really couldn't find anything as the AG because, again, it was kind of, I don't want to say it was wiped, but it wasn't easily accessible. We'll put it that way. But here, again, I'm saying she's running for office and she's currently a senator. You can't just erase your vote count. It doesn't work that way. So, and I'm not even saying that she was the one doing it, but there's always people in your party or on your campaign who want to make sure anything that could be controversial is removed so no one knows about it. It's not uncommon. It happens on the left, happens on the right. I'm sure it even happens with independents or libertarians or Green Party or constitutionalists. Probably happens anywhere. But that being said, we are actually going to jump to a different website now because if you notice here on the top of this page right here, it says GovTrack. I know I've seen that before and I couldn't think of why initially until I went on their website. And I totally remember this is a great website to go to just to get general statistics and data. And even the U.S. government is actually using their statistics and their sites to display, as you can see, on the own government websites, even though this is not a government website. Okay, so we're going to hop over to govtrack.us. And on here, it'll be a splash page, and it'll tell you kind of a little bit about who they are, and you can actually put in your address and find who your local representative is, or your local senator, well, not your local, but your state senator, or one of your two, or both of your state senators. And you can find out all the information, find out how they voted, which way they lean, what committees they send, all this great information right at your fingertips. And there's a reason why they do this. If you come up here and you click on About Us, and you go here, it'll kind of give you a quick breakdown of why it even exists. It says GovTrack.us's mission is to help Americans participate in their government. We make information about the United States Congress accessible, understandable, and actionable for public use. We do this by putting the information in context, tracking new developments on issues that our users care about, and helping our users take action to make a meaningful difference. So, and if you scroll down here, you can find out more about the people who actually developed and created this site, and you can see how long it's been around for. There's a timeline here. It's actually started in 2004 and they're doing bill status alerts by email because, frankly, that's all there was. Back in 2004, there wasn't a lot of websites yet. There were some, but not everyone had a computer. Not everyone had the internet, especially nothing like they do now. Then they had things about downloadable raw data, committee assignments, and just built on from over time. And as you can see, it got more and more in depth and more informational. And then you see all the way to 2019, and they actually testified before Congress on May 10th of 2019. GovTrack.us founder Joshua Tauber testified before the House Select Committee on the modernization of Congress on the subject of transparency. So as you can see, it's not like someone just was sitting in their basement making up facts. I mean, these are things that are actually used by the U.S. government, reported by the U.S. government, so they have to be fairly unbiased, and they are. And essentially, as you're going to see in just a second here, pretty much everything that they're talking about and doing is going to be, is going to be basically flat out. Like, this is just an informational page. So if you go onto, like right here, when you go over to Senator Kamala Harris's page on govtrack.us, and it'll give you a quick breakdown. You can actually track her, and then it'll send you notifications of anytime she does anything, if she introduces a bill, if she votes, and this is an excellent tool to use, especially if you want to kind of start tracking and following your own senators or your own representatives to find out what they're doing and how they're doing it. Truly, it's actually a very vital tool. It makes everything very user-friendly. And no, I have no affiliation in any way, shape, or form. I just completely forgot about this website until just now. And I'm so glad I found it because, as you'll see in a minute, it's going to make it very user-friendly to kind of go over Kamala Harris. Now, we're not going to go over every bill, but you're going to get a very clean snapshot, I think, of who she is, truly. Now, on here, you'll see there's lots of things to talk about. It talks about the 2020 election, which obviously we all know she's, the VP candidate for the Democrats. So there isn't much to look at here. It'll give you a little snapshot here. It'll tell you who they are, ways to contact her. Again, ways to track her and the way she's voting. Over here, you'll find links for the official website, her Twitter, bio guides, Vote Smart, C-SPAN, just anything and everything you could imagine. They're going to have all in one spot just for each candidate. So it's a great tool, like I said, to investigate people either who do represent you or who Well, actually, I guess they would represent you because they're already elected officials. They're not doing this for people who aren't elected. So it's just for people who are elected. So people who would be, who are either your representative or senator, or maybe potentially would be if you move to that area. It's a great way to check out to see who they are. And again, 2020 election, we don't really need to go over that very much. Now, over here, you're going to see analysis. Analysis is going to talk about these metrics of both leadership and ideology. Now, here's a general chart of the entire Senate. So on this chart, well, it's a simple graph. And again, for those who might be listening to this podcast and not being able to see it, again, you can easily check out this website at your leisure whenever you want. Maybe I'll even put a link down in the, at least for the YouTube, because that won't be going anywhere. I could put it in for YouTube, maybe even Facebook, not sure, but just put a little link in there so you can find out the website. But on this chart, it's a graph, and it's going to have, it's basically two axes. It's got ideology and leadership scores. And the ideology is split from the middle to the left and middle to the right. Obviously, it's pretty simple, left and right. Democrats typically are left, Republicans are typically right. Harris is actually marked on here with a purple triangle. And again, all Democrats are blue otherwise, and all Republicans are red, and any independents are gray. And there's only two independents in the Senate, and that's King and Sanders. And if you'll notice, Sanders is all the way over here. He's about as far left as you can get. He's almost off the chart. But he's also, if you notice here, the middle here is your average level of leadership. So Sanders, even though he's left, is actually rather kind of low on the leadership scale, isn't he? Oops, sorry about that. Apparently I had a notification. But you'll notice here, right here in purple is Harris. And Harris is surprisingly, well, not to me, but to some people might see this and go, well, she's really far to the left. In fact, if you go off this chart, it's only Sanders, Gillibrand, and I can't even read who that is because it's off my screen, and one other person who's more to the left than Harris out of all the Democrats in Senate. Is that kind of crazy? I mean, to me, it's not. Because like I said, I've heard many reports for a while now about how far left she truly is, but she just tries to give an impression that she's not that far left. But if these are actually based off the bills that Harris both sponsored and co-sponsored since she took office in 2017 up into through August 13th of 2020. So this is constantly moving. It's always adjusting. It's not like these are old statistics. This is everything she's done since she's been in office as a senator, marking her spot as to where she is ideologically as well as on the leadership scale. And some other things that you might see on here, which is actually really rather surprising, is again, right here down the middle is obviously the middle. And you have King, who's boy, I don't even know where he's from, but maybe I'll just pop him open. Nah. Let's see what happens when I go here. Oh, Angus King. Couldn't think of his name. Angus, what a great name. Yeah, so he's an independent. He's literally right down the middle. He's about, he seems like a really true independent. Again, a little low on the leadership scale, but still very much as far as the bills, he's either sponsoring or co-sponsoring. He is right down the middle. But what you might find interesting here is that there actually was 4 Democrats to the right of the center as far as their activity for sponsoring and co-sponsoring bills. In fact, there are even a couple of Democrats here, like Joe Manchin and Sinema. I think that's how you pronounce it. Doug Jones is right there. Tester are actually even more quote unquote conservative or more to the right leaning than some Republicans. I bet you can't guess who those 2 Republicans are. I bet you can't, but of course you can. That's going to be Murkowski and Collins, who most people always say are the swing votes in the Senate because they will at times very likely vote for Democratic policies. And as you can see, they're very close to the center. They are to the right of the center, but they're still very close to the center. But it is interesting that you do have Democrats who are considered to be more right than those ladies. Very interesting indeed. As we go down the page here, you're going to see things, and this is actually based off of advocacy organizations and their support for these candidates or these current officials. And you have like, oh my goodness, let's see. Let me pop this open bigger so I can read it too, because it's so small. I got my one screen here, but then when it cuts off part of it for the display purposes, and it's really not a good layout, and I should fix that. I totally should. So what we're going to do is we're going to go bigger screen here. Okay, so it's a human rights campaign. So she gets a 100% rating for the human rights campaign. Kind of makes sense. She's into human rights. Obviously, she's very supportive of the human rights, and they give her a 100% score. Nothing unusual there. The League of Conservation Voters. Again, it's about conservation, about the environment. She gets a 100% score there. And again, this might be important things for you. You might find this very interesting. Planned Parenthood Action Fund. She gets a 100% score. Now, that's actually not super easy to get a 100% score. I mean, you'll have a lot of Democrats who are 70, 75, 80, 85, 90%, but to get 100%, you got to agree with everything on the abortion. As you know, we talked about abortion earlier this week, or was it Friday of last week? I can't remember. But yeah, so she is very pro-abortion. So obviously, Planned Parenthood would probably be supporting her 100%, and they are. Now, this one I thought was a little interesting for two reasons. One, you might think it's low. I think it's high. Is from the American Civil Liberties Union, otherwise known as the ACLU. She actually gets a score of 86. Now, you might think, well, shouldn't she be completely behind the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, and get 100%? Actually, from what we talked about is her record as a DA and the way that she has treated, certain suspected criminals and the way that she's handled issues when they've come up about potential innocence. I'm surprised she gets an 86, to be honest with you. Now, this one I had never heard of. So I saw she gets this B. So they're not even doing a percentage, they're just doing a grade. And this is called the NIAC. Have you ever heard of it? Because I haven't. NIAC. Action, actually, is what it's called. And she gets a B. Now, I couldn't figure out what this was. So I had to look it up. And again, we're probably not going to be able to see this because it's going to be, so tiny and small. But it's actually the National Iranian American Council. Again, the National Iranian American Council. And that is who that is. And she gets a B. Now, I don't know, again, if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I have nothing against the NIAC. I don't know anything about them. But apparently, they like her, at least enough to give her a B. Now, we have the United States Chamber of Commerce. You're going to notice a trend here, okay? So again, the Human Rights Campaign, the League of Conservation Voters, Planned Parenthood Fund, all gave her 100%. The ACLU gave her 86%. The NIAC, the National Iranian American Council, gave her a B, so 80% plus. Now we're going to start talking about, again, the United States Chamber of Commerce. What do you think they gave her? Now, I know if you're watching this, you're going to see, but if you're at home, I said it again. If you're at home, if you're listening to the podcast, if you're driving your car, if you're doing your dishes, if you're at work, if you're doing some exercise and you don't know what you got because you're not watching this, take a guess. Right now, I'll give you 2 seconds to take a guess. Okay, she got 30% from the Chamber of Commerce. Again, this is economic. This is an economic platform. So economically, she may not get such a good score, but it's only one organization. Maybe other economic organizations gave her better scores. So we'll talk about the Club for Growth, excuse me. They gave her 19%, again, economic platform. The Americans for Prosperity, again, a economic platform, 12%. FreedomWorks is, again, a very much a economic platform, and they gave her 0. Noticing a trend? And there's this last one here, Numbers USA, which is actually about, I believe it's an immigration organization, and they gave her 0. So it's not a pro-immigration necessarily. I think it's more of not an anti-immigration, but they want to start limiting, immigrants and that sort of thing. So that's the organization that's there, and they gave her a 0. Okay, so, and again, someone who is fighting for human rights campaigns and what have you, you think that, who gets a high score there, you think they're going to get a low score on the Numbers USA. So that makes sense. Again, not a big deal, but that's just what you got. Again, oh my goodness, we're at 25 minutes. We have to hurry up, people. So we're going to start talking about her committee membership. Now, you notice here, she's on a good amount of committees. She's on the Senate Committee on the Budget, Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs, and she's on the Federal Spending Oversights and Emergency Management, the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations Subcommittees. She's on the Committee of Judiciary. I can't say that word. The Constitution, Intellectual Property Subcommittees, and on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. So good committees to be on. But again, you notice you don't see any chairs listed any there or on any of those committees or subcommittees or even co-chairs. And that kind of ties back into this whole leadership thing. She's barely at the middle run of the road. And the reason being is that she doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying she's not asserting herself, maybe because she knew she was so new, she didn't want to make too much of an impact or attempt to if she was going to run for a higher office like she is. So that might have been a very smart political, move, but we'll see. So as you can see, as far as the committees, those are the ones she sent. Now, as far as the enacted legislation, she doesn't have a lot. She doesn't really have a lot at all. But these are things that she was involved in. And it even says, does four not sound, it says, does four not sound like a lot? Very few bills are ever enacted. Now, this is something that most people don't realize. You could put out 50 bills and you might get one or two through, maybe. So you can be involved on several bills, hundreds of bills, but you won't get a lot through. Most legislatures sponsor only a handful that are signed into law. But there are other legislative activities that we don't track that are also important, including offering amendments, committee work like we were talking about, and oversight of the other branches. So again, it's not so much her voting record that matters, it's her overall activity on both the committees and the subcommittees, as well as her sponsors and co-sponsorships, not necessarily what gets passed, but what doesn't get passed. Bills sponsored, it actually has a breakdown. So it says public lands and natural resources were 19% of all the bills she either sponsored or co-sponsored. Crime and law enforcement, interesting enough, were 17% of the bills. Health were 15% of the bills. Immigration were 13%. Taxation was 12%. Environmental protection was 9%. Labor and employment, 9%. And emergency management was 6%. So as you can kind of see, it's kind of all over the place. But again, that would be completely normal to for a senator to sponsor. Again, it talks about some of the recent bills she's been involved in: mortgage relief, and to provide eviction relief, ensure climate and environmental justice accountability, requiring reporting on the Paycheck Protection Program, provides research and education with respect to uterine fibroids. Okay. But again, there are literally hundreds and thousands of bills that come through all the time that people don't hear about. But they're not, it's not to say that they're not important. Where we at here, to create a database of eviction information, establish grant programs, restore, reaffirm, and reconcile environmental justices and civil rights, amend the Rosie the Riveter World War II Home Front National. I don't know anything about that. But again, we're already at 28 minutes. We're not going to have time to get into it. But here are some of the big ones that she was involved in the key votes in the last few years that she's been in there. In fact, you'll see there's only 2 yays or 2 yeses, and there's many nays. She is not a popular person to vote on these things, is she? She doesn't apparently support a lot of legislation that goes through. In fact, a lot of these ones that do say nay still went through. She just voted no. And some of them are actually rather kind of surprising. I do recommend that if you have time, again, I will include the link in the YouTube. So if you go over to YouTube, watch the video on the bottom in the description, and a little doobly-doo down the bottom, I'll have a link, and you can just go click on here on this page, and you can check out all this information, because again, it would take me an hour, 2 hours to go through it all, and that's not going to happen. Yeah, not going to happen, because we don't have the time. And again, it talks about missed votes. This is actually one of the things I wanted to touch base on. So again, from January 2017 through August 2020, Kamala Harris missed 271 of 1,184 roll call votes, which is, give or take, 23%. Now, this is much worse than the median. Remember, we talked about median the other day. Median is a true middle, not the average, the true middle. So 50% of the people are below this, 50% are above this. The true median for people who typically miss votes averages 1.7% among the lifetime records of senators currently serving, and she's at 23% of missed votes. Now, that being said, it is a little misleading because if we come down here, you'll actually see almost all her missed votes came between January and March of 2019 through January and March of 2020, directly straight through. At certain points, she was missing 41, almost 42%, 82%, and 93% of votes. And again, she was on the campaign trail, so she was busy, and now she's still on the campaign trail. So she's probably going to start missing a lot more votes. If she gets elected, obviously she won't be taking any more votes. And if she doesn't get elected, I'm sure she'll start going back and taking regular votes. Okay? So again, That was a little snapshot of kind of where she's at as a senator. I know we were going to say it was only going to be talking about the way she voted on bills, but as we can see, it's more important about what she does as a senator. It's important to do with what committees she sits on and subcommittees, and when she votes and when she doesn't vote, when she's absent from votes. These are just as important as anything. And the bill she sponsors and co-sponsors. And again, this is all right here for you. I'm going to put a link, and you can check it out when you can. But believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, we're already at 31 minutes. We got to go. So it's been fun. It's been real. I hope you have a good night, and we will see you all tomorrow. Bye.